Second Chances, 23 Steps to Transforming Adversity into Opportunity by Chuck Gallagher. Chapter 9, Every Choice Has a Consequence. Dad, get up! Let's go open presents! My younger son was generally the first up on Christmas morning, full of joy and anticipation. His life spirit was always something that I deeply admired. No matter what was happening, he found something positive to talk about or focus on, turning attention away from the negative. For almost all his life, our family had been embroiled in the consequences of my past actions. That certainly weighed heavy on my wife. By this time, our marriage was disintegrating, as I expected it would after the news that I would go to prison at some point. Likewise, my older son was much more aware that things had changed in our family. While my wife and I worked hard to make sure they knew it had nothing to do with them, I am sure that it took as much an emotional toll on them as it did on us. Come on, Dad, get up! By Christmas 1994, 3 years had passed since I received that fax deferring my prosecution. I knew I'd been given a gift when my attorney had called, sharing that joyous news several years earlier. What I didn't know was just how significant the choices made during that span of time would be. Intellectually, I understood the concept of choices and consequences, but on a deeper emotional level, I still didn't grasp the bigger picture. Perhaps because I didn't want to face the bigger picture. The threat of prosecution looming over me was an emotionally draining experience. Not a day would go by that I wouldn't think about it and feel that pain in the pit of my stomach. I didn't know how I would face it. There were times when I wanted to give up. What difference would it make anyway? I would sometimes lapse into a pit of self-pity. I had lost my reputation, my job, my home, my income, and likely my family. For what, I wondered? The outcome was still the same: prison. There were times when I wondered if it might not have been better off just to have taken the punishment and spiraled into a life with no future, accepting the role of convicted felon. Then there were times, in fact, most of the time, that I was so thankful for the additional time that I had received. It provided me the time to begin to repay the loans to the people who had helped me. It provided me more time to help with the children. It also provided me more time to develop my new career and earn the respect of the new people in my life. In some ways, upon reflection, it seemed as if I was a person who had been given only a short time to live, only to find out that the prognosis was better than anticipated and more time was available. Other than my occasional slips into gloom, I was very grateful for the additional time, and I wanted to make the best of it. To me, my upcoming prison stay was a bit like a death sentence. It was the bottom of the barrel for me. So any time given to enjoy freedom was a precious gift, not to be wasted by the small stuff. Yet, not a day went by that I didn't realize I must soon face the consequences for my choices. I couldn't avoid the outcome, whatever that outcome might be. Okay, I'm up. Merry Christmas, son. I love you. I jolted out of my thoughts and joined both my sons for what would turn out to be our last Christmas together before my time in prison. During those 3 years, I became a farmer of sorts. I didn't take up farming in the true sense. Rather, I began planting seeds that I hope would provide a harvest someday. If it was true that you reap what you sow, then in my mind, sowing the right seeds was important so that when the harvest came, the crop would be outstanding. All too often, people like me await an outcome, becoming immobilized, and forget about what they can do in the meantime. Their fear of the future is so great that it paralyzes their present experience. When the future arises, we don't always get to choose the outcome. Hence, when the outcome arrives, we find it is less than we desired. We tend to blame others, our environment, or anything other than ourselves and our choices. I won't try to share that every choice I made during this temporary get-out-of-jail card. Yet, many times today, I'm asked about how I recovered from the effects of my choices. After all, most convicted felons would never be able to serve in a senior management capacity with a public company. The answer is simple: the choices I made. During those 3 years, I was focused on the choices. Much to my surprise, I was given the opportunity to work, and work I did. Not only did I serve in an accounting capacity with the company that hired me, but they asked me to become involved in sales. I jumped at the opportunity. If you're a doctor and you violate your oath and you lose your license, you still have those skills you were taught, but it's hard to regain the trust of those who would use your skills. Perhaps in applying your abilities to another endeavor would be more effective. Likewise, if you're an attorney who has been disbarred for unethical conduct, your knowledge of the law hasn't changed, but the willingness of others to secure your service may be hampered. After all, how can you help them with their legal issues if you can't operate within the law yourself? My case was no different. I could have fought to stay in accounting, but my instinct said to move into another career, start over, make better choices. The sales profession is one of the few that is a bit forgiving. First, everything has to be sold in some form or another. Second, with few exceptions, there are no professional standards or requirements that serve as a barrier to entry into the profession. And third, those with natural talent in sales can always find some organization that has a need and will give them a chance. Within the scope of less than 18 months from my exit as a CPA, I found myself in sales. What a godsend. I get odd comments from people when this part of my past enters the discussion. Some equate my entry into sales and my legal status as evidence that only scum of the earth lowlifes enter into sales. How completely wrong. I have met and been mentored by some of the most professional and ethical people I know in the sales arena. To judge all salespeople as less than ethical is to judge all women by the standards that famous female pop stars have set. What I have learned is that regardless of my past, I can accomplish anything as long as I want to make the right choices going forward. My choice of work or income wasn't the only choice that could yield the consequence that likely I desired. Every choice I made contributed to the outcome I desired. During this same time, I focused all my income-producing efforts into making restitution. The courses I taught funded a significant part of the restitution made. Beyond that, my income from work funded the rest. All my income, excluding $700 per month, went to restitution. Fortunately, my employer was willing to provide me a place to live. From everything I've experienced personally and have seen in the years following my incarceration, if you take the initiative to make the right choices, eventually things will come together to support your efforts and choices. All too often, when the cards are stacked against you, when you feel that nothing is working for your good, you focus on the negative and expect the worst. What you expect, you'll likely receive. Often, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't make the choices you should. You quit making good choices when you don't see an immediate outcome or the outcome you want when you want it. Either way, failure to make good choices or ceasing to make those good choices too soon typically results in less than stellar results. People often quit moving forward just before their miracle happens, and they miss the opportunity. Some believe there is no such thing as luck. Actually, those people who seem to be lucky are the same people who also focus on making choices to support the outcome they seek. In my case, I can resoundingly say that I was not lucky. Rather, things came together for a positive outcome because I was unwilling to make choices to support anything other than the best for my family and myself. During question and answer sessions after presentations, I'm often asked about making good choices for my family. I love my family, and I know that if I had any chance at being an effective role model for my children, the choices I made would be critical. However, the truth is, my choices were first made for me. If I didn't have enough concern for myself, enough self-respect, then external motivations would be short-lived. When others come forward and ask what they could do to gain better outcomes, the first thought that comes to my mind is care enough about yourself to want a better outcome first for you. Time seemed to pass quickly during the 3 years leading up to that Christmas morning. Frankly, I knew in the back of my mind that the 3 years the federal government had given me had passed. In fact, by that Christmas, the 3 years had come and gone with no word from my attorney or the U.S. attorney. Could it be that I was to receive the greatest Christmas present I could imagine? That they had just forgotten about me? The day had come and gone, and the time with my children was precious. There's nothing like the unconditional love of a child to bring joy. When those little boys would run up and jump into my arms squealing with laughter, I could not imagine not being with them. Punishment was something I dealt myself daily as I considered the possibility of what would happen should I be taken away from them through incarceration. December 26, 1994 was a Monday. What happens on December 26 most of the time? Unless that day falls on a Sunday, the mail is delivered. The day before Christmas Day and the Sunday was glorious. As I arrived home from work on Monday, I had mail from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They had not forgotten, not at all. The wheels of justice may move slowly, but they always come around. The 3 years had passed since I was given a deferred prosecution offer by the U.S. Attorney. Now that the deadline had come, I had to uphold my end of the bargain. Now was the time for me to plead guilty. The emotional high experienced earlier was followed by an emotional low. It was familiar territory for me. I had hoped that somehow I had been forgotten in all the other issues they dealt with. My deluded desire for governmental forgetfulness was rudely burst by a very unemotional letter giving me a date and time to report to the federal courthouse to enter my guilty pleas. I walked into my home with my head even lower. The time for me to face the legal punishment phase of my consequences loomed. I just didn't know how I could walk through the doors into prison. Punishment takes many forms. I began creating my consequences and punishment the day I made the choice to steal money from my trusting client. I've been living those consequences since that time. I felt punishment every time I looked into my wife's eyes, knowing that our relationship would never be the same. At this point, however, punishment was legal and inflicted by the government. Punishment isn't always exacted by outside forces. It's often more severe from our internal feelings of guilt or worthlessness, feelings that can gnaw at us, which are more powerful than what any government can dish out. They become your internal prison, a prison worse than any governmental agency can impose upon you. I know so well the feeling of out of sight, out of mind. That's exactly what I was hoping for. But the reality is, you can never avoid the consequences of your actions. This letter was a very clear reminder to me of that fact. While not a day went by I didn't think about this day, as time passed I became more hopeful that somehow my good choices would make this nightmare go away. No such luck. Remember, you do reap what you sow, and I could not avoid the reaping. The only thing that had truly happened is that the reaping was postponed so I would have time to sow some good seeds. I remember walking up the steps to the federal courthouse side by side with my attorney as the day arrived for my first time before a judge. I was silent, unusual for me. I never stood before a judge, and I felt a little overwhelmed at that prospect. I was completely willing to plead guilty to crimes I had committed. I could not argue that I did not commit them. Everyone knew I did. Having made restitution and admitting wrongdoing, I could do nothing other than plead guilty. My hope was that the seeds I had sown during my freedom, along with the character witnesses, would prove to be enough to gain me a probationary sentence. After all, restitution, employment, and young children, along with exemplary character comments, should count for something. What would putting me in prison do other than hurt others? I had no idea what to expect. First, I was processed, fingerprinted, and photographed. Shortly thereafter, I was reunited with my attorney as I stepped nervously into the courtroom. I had been in a courtroom before, but then I had been on the jury. I admit, it was fun then, and when I was not the one on trial. Although there was no jury for me, I was just there to plead guilty. I still found it very uncomfortable, knowing that whatever was to happen with me was happening now. How do you plead? Was the judge's question to my attorney and me. Guilty, Your Honor, responded my attorney. To both counts, Counselor? Yes, Your Honor. My client pleads guilty to both counts. The time spent there was fairly short, with the judge accepting my plea and indicating sentencing would follow. I walked into the courtroom a free man and walked out a convicted felon. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that my time in a courtroom would be focused on my actions. As I walked out of the courtroom, my attorney set the stage for things to come. He let me know that sentencing would likely be several months away, and that in the meantime, I needed to make sure I didn't get into further trouble with the law. His last admonishment was a non-issue, as I had changed my behavior and become more honest and real with myself over the past 4 years. Frankly, I was hoping that the positive choices I had made would keep me out of prison. Probation, I could handle. Prison, well, that was another issue, one that I did not want to face. How many of us truly want to face the demons we've created and the consequences before us? Whether it's issues with substance abuse, relationship issues, abuse issues, or a host of other prisons we often find ourselves in, I doubt that many of us find joy in facing the outcome head on. Rather, it's much easier to revert to old ways, comfortable ways, and hope that the future consequence never arrives. Like most, after the conviction was over, I began my day-to-day routines. I believed that somehow I could avoid the likelihood of prison if only I lived an exemplary life. Surely the judge would see what I had done and find it in his heart to show what I thought would be well-deserved mercy. In early June 1995, I had just finished an extensive recruiting session and started a training class for my employer. One thing I dearly enjoyed was the opportunity to train. By now, the opportunity to speak had passed, as most of my former clients had been absorbed by other presenters. It's hard to be effective as a presenter to CPAs when you've lost your license and been convicted for what is abhorrent to the profession. So, in-house training was the only practical outlet for my talents and the best way to recapture the joy of presenting. As the first day of training ended, I was interrupted by Betty, one of the most caring administrative assistants I'd ever had the privilege of working with. "Chuck, you've got a call up at the office," she announced as she walked into the training room. "Take a message, please," I replied. One thing that really bugged me was interruptions in training, and while I love Betty, she wasn't allowed to interrupt either. "It's your attorney, and he said he'd hold." And with that said, Betty walked out. "Excuse me, I'll be back in a few," I told the class as I made my way up to the office. Thinking all the way there, I had concluded that Betty and I had to have a talk. Surely she could have been more discreet. Saying your attorney is on the line in front of a class of new trainees was just inexcusable. I suspected that she did that so I would confide in her what was going on. As it was, I had shared with no one my background, conviction, or possible future. If my future included probation as I saw it, there was no need to reveal my sordid past. I almost think it was easier to focus my attention on Betty than to wonder what my attorney would have to say. Perhaps he's calling to tell me that my sentencing is probation. That thought was pressing on my mind as I took those 3 steps up to the office door. Pulling the noisy screen door open, Betty caught my eye and pointed to the phone with 3 fingers raised. That meant line 3. By the way she looked at me and pointed to the phone, I got the feeling that she expected me to take it right there, in an open office, so that all could hear, especially Betty. No such luck. Looking down the hall for an open office, I closed the door and stared at the phone for a moment. Usually I would jump at the chance to talk, but frankly, I wasn't sure this was a call I really wanted to take. Chuck, Frank here. Your hearing is set for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. You need to be there with any character witnesses you might have. I'll meet you at the courthouse. Frank, I've just started a training class. Can't we postpone this for a week? Chuck, it's tomorrow. He had warned me it would likely be early June, but I expected a little more warning. As I said, my attorney was a man of few words. I was hoping that luck would fall my way, but I received very little encouragement from Frank. He was straight to the point and practical with his advice. Somehow, I think his parents did the right thing by naming him because his approach was defined by his name. As I stepped out of the door from the office where I took the call, I remember hearing, as if in the distance somewhere, Betty say, "Chuck, are you all right?" I have no clue what my response was. In that moment, I began to feel the weight of all my past deeds weigh heavy on my shoulders, if not on my very being. I felt as if I were in a fog and couldn't connect to the present moment. Reality began to sink in as I walked back down the hill to my new training class. I felt the anxious fear in the pit of my stomach. Tomorrow, I would face my fate. One word uttered from the mouth of someone who didn't know me, prison or probation, would define my future. With that thought in my head, it was hard for me to focus on the class. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but tomorrow I have to be out of town. There is nothing worse than dealing with attorneys on their time frame. And with those words out of my mouth, I tried to edge out a smile as if everything was all right. How could they know otherwise? We'll pick back up on Wednesday, I said, and with that, I dismissed the group. Would I be back on Wednesday? Frankly, by that point, my mind was racing with all that had to be done to corral the folks who had agreed to testify on my behalf. Stilling an active mind is hard, especially when you think that actions can manipulate consequences. For my part, the idea of garnering the troops to appear on my behalf was my last desperate effort to bring about a probation outcome. Even in June, there was a Christmas in that early morning air in Asheville, North Carolina, as we arrived well over an hour early. I had hoped this day would never arrive, that somehow the government would see all that I had done to correct my past misdeeds, that somehow it all would be a bad dream and that I would wake up in the comfort of knowing that it was over. Thoughts like that are unrealistic. We can't escape the outcome that most surely will follow our actions. And today, with no time to ponder, I entered the outer area of the federal courthouse with nothing to do but wait for my character witnesses and attorney to arrive. Wait and think. That was all that was left to do. I felt as if I could be watching a Perry Mason episode, except I was watching myself as the central character. There I was, with my attorney, beside the enormous wooden table hearing, "All rise." I couldn't begin to tell you what else was said. The official seemed to be speaking in a foreign language. "Be seated." And with that, the process began. I found myself in amazement at the speed of the process. My character witnesses were questioned, but not given the time I thought they needed to share the truth about my exemplary behavior and the truth about why I should receive probation. All seemed rote, as if the parties were going through the motions but with no concern or emotion. Even the judge acted somewhat disinterested. It was as if the decision were already made and they only had to go through the motions to appease the law. They were talking about my life, my freedom. I wanted so badly to make an emotional plea for compassionate clemency. After all, how could justice rule with any other verdict other than probation? As the judge began to speak, I have no recollection of anything he said other than 18 months active, 3 years supervised release. This couldn't be. Had he not heard all the facts of the case, my character witnesses? Could he not see how much I had changed and how remorseful I was regarding my initial choices? I wanted to scream at him, but I just stood there silent and in shock. This couldn't be happening. The gavel dropped and the party was over. I had just been sentenced to an active prison sentence. One phase of this nightmare was over and the next phase had yet to begin. How could this be? In disbelief, I followed my attorney out of the courtroom and took his instructions regarding what to do next. Perhaps it was because of the crime, perhaps it was because of my behavior, I don't know, but I was not escorted out like a common criminal. Rather, I was given my freedom without bond. I was told that I would be given a date to report to prison, but no time frame was given. And I was left once again to wonder when that date would be. Within 45 minutes of the hearing beginning, I was back on the road to my home. The trip back seemed like an eternity, and I doubt 25 words were spoken, at least by me. I had withdrawn into my own little world, facing once again an unknown future. I really believed that the one thing I was sure I would avoid by all my right actions was going to prison. It was the one thing I feared and the one thing I would have to face completely and totally alone. No one could help me in prison. There I would be alone, with time on my hands to deal with the thoughts of my deeds and the reality I had created for myself. There would be no way to avoid looking at the truth of what I had done and what I had become. What I couldn't see at the moment was the opportunity to truly change my future. This step was necessary to secure my journey forward. As evening dawned, I went to my apartment wishing that the day I had just experienced had never happened. I held my emotions in check. That night, as I turned on some music to calm my tattered emotions, a song came on that touched a chord. For the first time in a long time, I sobbed. I was feeling the remorse for 5 years of earlier actions that seemed insignificant at the time, but were proving to be pivotal for me now. Every choice has a consequence, and my choices had come full circle, shattering my former self. Perhaps that had to happen so I could accomplish what my mother told me so many times when she said, "Son, you can be somebody." Perhaps I had to face this time alone to come to understand I was somebody. Shattered, a song by Jimmy Webb, played when the emotion floodgate opened. Shattered like a window pane, broken by a stone, each tiny piece of me lies alone. I heard those words and others that followed. I was shattered, at least for the moment. But this too will pass, I thought, as the tears flowed like